Not because you asked for it, but because you kept going when no one was watching, because you carried quiet battles behind a steady face, because you loved deeply, lost bravely, and still chose kindness in a world that often forgets it. This is for the moments you doubted yourself, yet showed up anyway, for the nights you questioned your worth, and the mornings you stood up again. Life doesn't always reward the loudest voice, but it always remembers the truest heart. This is not about perfection, it's about presence. It's about choosing love over fear, growth over comfort, and meaning over noise. So if you're listening right now, know this: you matter, your journey matters. And this moment, this is for you. This is for you, not because you arrived early or because you did everything right, but because there is a divine intent that has followed your life from the beginning, an intention older than your mistakes and stronger than your fears, a purpose that existed before opinions formed and before circumstances tried to define you. For you were not an accident of time, but a deliberate expression of heaven's wisdom, positioned in a generation that needs what you carry, shaped by experiences that refined your discernment, and guided by a hand that never left even when you thought you were walking alone. Because every step, whether celebrated or ignored, was allowed to align you with a future that required depth, humility, and strength of spirit. Many times you wondered why progress felt slow, why effort did not immediately translate to results, why doors closed when you were sure they should open. Yet there was a wisdom at work beyond your understanding, ensuring that you would not arrive before you were ready, protecting you from platforms that could destroy your character, and withholding visibility until your roots could sustain the weight of elevation. This is for you who learned patience in the place of delay, who discovered prayer when answers were absent, who developed endurance when applause was missing, because some trainings cannot happen in public, some lessons cannot be learned in comfort, and some dimensions of authority are only entrusted to those who have been processed by silence. There is a reason you survived what should have broken you, a reason you outgrew spaces that once felt like home, a reason your hunger increased while distractions lost their appeal. For heaven was refining your appetite, teaching you to desire substance over appearance, truth over popularity, and purpose over convenience. What you call pain was often permission, permission for growth, permission for clarity, permission for separation, because not everyone can go where you are going, and not every voice deserves access to your destiny. And so you were stripped of certain connections, certain supports, and certain comforts, not to weaken you, but to teach you dependence on a source that never fails. This is for you who questioned your worth because results were delayed, who measured yourself against timelines that were never assigned to you, who forgot that the maker of seasons decides when fruit appears, and that visibility without maturity is a burden, not a blessing. The journey shaped your discernment, trained your spirit to recognize truth, and refined your heart to carry responsibility without pride, because influence without humility corrupts and power without love destroys. And so you were taught to kneel before you were allowed to stand, to listen before you were allowed to speak, to serve before you were allowed to lead. There were moments you felt overlooked, moments you felt misunderstood, moments when obedience seemed unrewarded. Yet every act of faith was recorded, every seed sown in secret was preserved, every tear carried meaning, because nothing offered sincerely is ever wasted in the economy of purpose. You were being aligned with the right timing, aligned with the right people, aligned with the right capacity. And alignment often feels like loss before it feels like gain, feels like isolation before it feels like impact, feels like surrender before it feels like authority. This is for you who stayed when it was easier to leave, who believed when evidence was absent, who obeyed instructions that did not make sense to your logic but resonated with your spirit. Because faith is not proven by convenience but by consistency, not by speed but by submission, not by noise, but by depth. The fire did not come to destroy you. It came to purify intention, to remove dependency on applause, to separate calling from ambition, and to ensure that when doors open, you will know how to walk through them without losing yourself. Because purpose is not just about arrival, it is about preservation. And destiny is not just about what you achieve, but about who you become while pursuing it. You are being prepared to represent something greater than personal success, to carry responsibility with grace, to speak with wisdom born from experience, and to stand with authority rooted in integrity. And that kind of preparation requires time, requires pressure, requires seasons where nothing seems to move, yet everything is being rearranged beneath the surface. This is for you who felt delayed but were actually being developed, who felt forgotten but were actually being hidden, who felt weak but were actually being strengthened in ways that would sustain future assignments. Because when the moment comes, you will realize that nothing was random, nothing was wasted, and nothing was late, for timing is a language of purpose, and every chapter, even the painful ones, contributed to the clarity, capacity, and conviction you now carry as you stand on the edge of what has been quietly prepared for you, knowing that what comes next will demand a depth only this journey could produce, and a strength that was forged when you chose to trust, even when you could not see, and you could not explain, even when all you had was a quiet assurance in your spirit that this was for you and that everything unfolding was aligning you with an assignment that required everything you have become so far and everything you are still becoming. As the process continues to unfold and the path ahead begins to reveal layers of responsibility, influence, and impact that will require you to remain yielded, aware, and sensitive to the voice that guided you from the beginning and is still leading you forward into dimensions you once prayed for, but could not yet comprehend as you were being shaped, refined, and positioned in silence, while the future waited for the right version of you to arrive and step into it fully prepared, fully aligned, fully surrendered, carrying a heart that understands that purpose is stewarded, not owned, and that everything entrusted must be carried with reverence, wisdom, and obedience as the journey continues unfolding without interruption and without retreat into what was comfortable, but with a steady advancement into what has been prepared ahead of you, since before you knew to ask for it and long before you understood why the path required such depth of trust and such unwavering commitment to becoming everything that was required for what was assigned to you in this season and beyond. This is for you who learned that alignment is not agreement with comfort, but surrender to direction, because obedience is not proven when instructions are easy, but when they stretch your understanding and confront your preferences, when the path ahead looks unfamiliar and the outcome is unclear, yet something within you bears witness that this is the way you must walk. Alignment required you to let go of certain ideas you held about how life should unfold, to release timelines you carefully constructed, and to abandon methods that once worked but no longer carried the breath of purpose, because growth demands sensitivity, and sensitivity requires humility to accept that yesterday's strategy may not sustain tomorrow's assignment. You discovered that obedience is not blind compliance but conscious trust, knowing that the voice leading you sees the full picture while you only see fragments, and that true safety is not found in control but in submission to wisdom greater than your own. There were moments when obedience isolated you, when your decisions could not be explained without sounding foolish, when your refusal to compromise made you seem difficult, slow, or overly cautious. Yet alignment often separates before it elevates, and obedience often looks like delay before it manifests as acceleration. You learn that moving fast without alignment creates friction, exhaustion, and regret, while moving slowly with clarity produces peace, stability, and lasting fruit. This is for you who obeyed when applause was absent, who stayed faithful in assignments that offered no recognition, who served diligently even when your name was never mentioned, because obedience trains the heart to value approval from the right source, and alignment anchors identity beyond validation. You began to understand that purpose is not activated by ambition, but by positioning, and positioning requires obedience to instructions that prepare capacity, not just visibility. Many times you felt the urge to rush, to prove, to force outcomes, yet restraint became your discipline, patience became your protection, and discernment became your language, teaching you that not every opportunity is a blessing and not every open door is assigned to you. Alignment demanded that you say no to good things to preserve strength for the right things, that you walk away from environments that drained your spirit, that you adjust your pace to match timing rather than pressure, because alignment is as much about where you stand as how you move. Obedience refines your hearing, training you to recognize direction beyond noise, to distinguish urgency from importance, and to understand that peace is often the confirmation that logic cannot provide. This is for you who wrestled internally before obeying, who questioned, who hesitated, who struggled, yet chose to yield anyway, because obedience does not require the absence of fear, it requires the presence of trust. Each act of alignment restructured your inner world, corrected your priorities, and aligned your desires with responsibility, because power released without alignment damages both the carrier and the environment, and influence without obedience becomes self-serving. You were taught that alignment protects destiny from premature exposure, preserves character from corruption, and ensures that when results come, they rest on a foundation strong enough to endure scrutiny and success. Obedience did not always feel rewarding, yet it consistently produced clarity, and clarity gave you confidence not rooted in outcomes but in conviction, knowing that even when results were delayed, you were correctly positioned. This is for you who learned that alignment does not always change your location immediately, but always changes your posture, adjusting how you see, how you respond, and how you wait. You discovered that obedience refines motives, stripping away the need to be seen, to be praised, to be validated, until purpose itself becomes the reward. Alignment taught you to listen more than you speak, to observe more than you react, and to move only when direction is clear, because unnecessary movement wastes strength meant for impact. There were moments obedience cost you relationships, opportunities, and familiarity, yet it preserved your future, because anything that cannot survive alignment was never meant to accompany you into purpose. You learned that obedience creates access to wisdom, access to timing, access to protection, and access to dimensions that talent alone cannot reach. This is for you who chose alignment over popularity, obedience over speed, depth over disple. Because such choices quietly shape authority, build credibility, and establish trust that cannot be manufactured. Alignment trained you to honor process, to respect seasons, and to value preparation, understanding that elevation without obedience creates pressure, but elevation through alignment creates capacity. As you yielded repeatedly, your sensitivity increased, your distractions diminished, and your clarity sharpened, because obedience fine-tunes perception and aligns desire with assignment. You realize that alignment is not a one-time decision, but a daily posture, a continual yielding of will, emotion, and ambition, ensuring that each step remains connected to instruction. This is for you who obeyed when it felt inconvenient, when it required sacrifice, when it demanded silence instead of explanation, because obedience stores momentum for future seasons, momentum that will later appear as sudden progress, favor, and effectiveness that others cannot trace. Alignment prepared you to carry responsibility without losing yourself, to lead without dominating, to influence without manipulating, and to succeed without compromise. Because obedience anchors success in sustainability. What you gained through alignment was not just direction, but peace, not just instruction, but assurance, not just clarity, but confidence that your steps are ordered, even when the destination is still unfolding, even when the process continues shaping you, even when the path requires ongoing surrender, attentiveness, and faithfulness. As alignment continues working within you, adjusting, correcting, strengthening, and preparing you to function accurately in every assignment ahead, while remaining sensitive, teachable, and responsive to direction as the journey continues without conclusion and without pause, as obedience remains your compass and alignment remains your protection in every unfolding season. This is for you who lived through seasons where nothing made sense on the outside, yet everything was being arranged on the inside. Seasons where progress was invisible and answers were quiet, where effort seemed disconnected from outcomes and faith felt stretched beyond comfort. because hidden seasons are not empty seasons, but incubators of strength, discernment, and capacity. In those moments when life slowed down and visibility reduced, you were not forgotten, you were being protected, preserved from pressures you were not yet equipped to handle, shielded from expectations that could fracture identity, and allowed to develop depth away from comparison and noise. Silence became your classroom, teaching you to listen beyond words, to recognize subtle corrections, and to value inner growth over external validation. While others advanced publicly, you were advancing privately, learning discipline when no one was watching, cultivating consistency without reward, and developing resilience through routine obedience. The absence of recognition refined your motives, revealing whether your pursuit was rooted in purpose or applause, because what survives obscurity is what deserves visibility. Hidden seasons confronted you with yourself, exposing insecurities, ambitions, and fears that would later sabotage impact if left unchecked. And in that confrontation, you learned honesty, learning to admit weakness without surrendering identity, learning to ask for strength without losing dignity, learning to wait without resentment. You discovered that preparation often feels like delay, and development often feels like stagnation, yet both are necessary to sustain future influence. In those quiet chapters, your foundations were laid carefully, values were reinforced, convictions were clarified, and character was strengthened, because structure precedes scale and integrity precedes authority. You learned to carry responsibility in small assignments, to honor details, to show up consistently even when outcomes were minimal, understanding that greatness is built through faithfulness in what seems insignificant. The hidden season trained your endurance, stretching your patience and refining your faith, teaching you to trust process over progress and alignment over appearance. You learned that silence is not punishment, but permission, permission to heal, to recalibrate, to shed expectations imposed by others, and to rediscover your identity apart from performance. In obscurity, your voice matured, your discernment sharpened, and your capacity expanded because pressure applied gradually strengthens, while pressure applied prematurely breaks. This is for you who wrestled with doubt in the quiet, who questioned timing, who wondered if effort mattered, yet continued to show up, continued to pray, continued to serve, continued to believe, because persistence in silence is proof of conviction. The hidden season stripped away dependencies, teaching you not to rely on momentum, affirmation, or visibility, but to anchor confidence in consistency and obedience. You learned to self-correct, to remain disciplined without supervision, to maintain excellence without applause, knowing that what you do in secret shapes how you function in public. While the world measured success by speed and exposure, you were learning sustainability, learning how to last, how to remain steady under pressure, how to maintain clarity when demands increase. Hidden seasons redefine success for you, shifting focus from recognition to readiness, from arrival to alignment, from being seen to being prepared. You realize that some delays are divine defenses, preventing premature exposure, guarding you from comparison, and preserving your uniqueness until the right moment. In obscurity, your sensitivity increased, your hearing refined, and your ability to discern direction strengthened because silence amplifies clarity when distractions are removed. You learn to interpret stillness not as stagnation but as stabilization, allowing internal systems to strengthen before external expansion. The hidden season demanded trust without evidence, faith without feedback, and obedience without reassurance, yet each day you remained faithful. Momentum was being stored for future release. You learn that preparation is often lonely because growth requires separation, and separation is uncomfortable, yet necessary to protect focus and purity of intention. In those moments of solitude, you learn to confront fear, to manage disappointment, to process pain without becoming bitter, and to carry hope without denial, because emotional maturity is as essential as spiritual capacity. Hidden seasons taught you to value truth over trend, depth over display, and substance over speed, shaping a mindset capable of sustaining long-term impact. You learn to steward small victories, to celebrate internal progress, to acknowledge growth even when it was not visible to others. the quiet cultivated wisdom, wisdom born from reflection, correction, and patience, wisdom that cannot be rushed or borrowed. You discovered that obscurity is often the birthplace of clarity, where distractions fade and purpose becomes defined. In the hidden place, you were trained to observe patterns, to discern timing, and to recognize when to act and when to wait, because wisdom is not knowing what to do, but knowing when to do it. This is for you who endured isolation without losing compassion, who remained soft-hearted without becoming weak, who protected integrity even when shortcuts were tempting, because hidden seasons test character more than competence. You learn to remain teachable, to receive correction without offense, and to adjust posture without losing confidence, understanding that flexibility preserves relevance and humility sustains growth. The hidden season refined your appetite, reducing craving for attention and increasing hunger for accuracy, depth, and truth. You became less reactive and more reflective, less impulsive and more intentional, less driven by urgency and more guided by discernment. In silence, you learned to hear clearly, and in waiting, you learn to move wisely. The absence of immediate results strengthened your resolve, anchoring your commitment beyond emotion, beyond excitement, beyond motivation, because purpose requires endurance more than inspiration. Hidden seasons prepared you for visibility by teaching you how to remain grounded, how to manage pressure, how to guard your inner life when demands increase. You learn that exposure magnifies what already exists, and that integrity developed in secret protects influence in public. The waiting season refined your capacity to hold responsibility, ensuring that when doors open, you will not be overwhelmed by expectations or compromised by success. You realize that growth is often happening quietly, beneath the surface, where roots deepen, systems strengthen, and resilience forms. This is for you who remained faithful in the unseen, who honored process without applause, who trusted timing without evidence, because what is formed in silence carries weight, carries stability, carries authority. Hidden seasons taught you to value consistency over intensity, faithfulness over excitement, and obedience over outcome. You learned to keep showing up, to keep preparing, to keep aligning even when no one was counting, because preparation does not announce itself. It reveals itself when opportunity arrives. As the hidden season continued, you were being layered with wisdom, discernment, and strength, qualities that would later be recognized as grace, favor, and authority, even though they were forged through quiet endurance and unseen discipline. You began to understand that obscurity is not the absence of purpose, but the protection of it, and that silence is not emptiness, but intentional, shaping, preparing you to carry future assignments with stability, clarity, and depth. As the process continues unfolding, refining, strengthening, and aligning you with responsibilities that require the maturity developed only through waiting, patience, and faithful stewardship in seasons where nothing seemed to be happening, yet everything that mattered was being formed within you without interruption and without conclusion. As the journey continues forward in silence and preparation, this is for you who are becoming, not just arriving, but transforming, not merely carrying an assignment, but becoming a vessel capable of holding weight, responsibility, and influence without fracture, because purpose is not poured into ambition, but into capacity, and capacity is built through surrender, refinement, and consistent alignment. Becoming a vessel required you to allow shaping, to submit to correction without resistance, and to embrace process without bitterness, understanding that what is poured into an unprepared container leaks, and what is placed into a fragile vessel breaks under pressure. You learn that availability is not enough, sincerity is not enough, passion is not enough, because impact demands preparation, and preparation demands discipline, restraint, and teachability. Becoming required you to release certain versions of yourself, to let go of identities formed by survival rather than purpose, and to unlearn patterns that once protected you but would later limit you. You were shaped through repetition, through small obediences, through ordinary days where faithfulness mattered more than inspiration, because vessels are strengthened through consistent use, not occasional intensity. Pressure revealed weaknesses, not to shame you, but to expose areas needing reinforcement. And correction came not as punishment, but as protection, ensuring that future assignments would not collapse you from within. You learned to separate calling from ego, understanding that true authority flows from humility, and that power is safest in the hands of those who do not crave it. Becoming a vessel demanded internal alignment, where thoughts, motives, and actions began to agree, reducing internal conflict and increasing clarity, because internal harmony produces external effectiveness. You learn to guard your inner life, to manage emotions, to discipline reactions, and to maintain integrity under stress, knowing that leadership exposes inner content and influence amplifies inner condition. This is for you who endured refinement that felt restrictive, who experienced limitations that felt unfair, who faced corrections that challenged pride yet chose submission over self-defense. Because refinement removes excess and preserves essence. You discovered that being a vessel is not about being filled once, but about being continually prepared, continually cleaned, continually aligned. Because residue from previous seasons can contaminate future assignments. You learn to value purity of intention, clarity of motive, and accuracy of execution, understanding that excellence honors purpose and precision preserves credibility. Becoming required consistency, the discipline to show up even when energy was low, to remain faithful when enthusiasm faded, to continue preparing when recognition was absent, because vessels are built through endurance, not convenience. You learn that emotional maturity is as essential as spiritual capacity, that unmanaged emotions distort judgment, sabotage relationships, and weaken authority, and so you embrace self-awareness, reflection, and restraint. Becoming a vessel meant learning how to carry responsibility without ownership, to serve without entitlement, to influence without manipulation because purpose is stewarded, not possessed. You learned to remain teachable, to listen before responding, to receive correction without defensiveness, and to adjust posture without losing confidence, understanding that flexibility preserves longevity. This is for you who allowed yourself to be emptied of pride, emptied of impatience, emptied of unhealthy ambition, making room for wisdom, discernment, and compassion, because what fills you determines how you pour. You learn to measure success by faithfulness rather than speed, by accuracy rather than applause, by sustainability rather than intensity. Becoming required boundaries, learning when to say no, when to rest, when to withdraw, because even a strong vessel cracks if overextended or mishandled. You discovered that solitude strengthens clarity, that rest preserves effectiveness, and that rhythm sustains productivity. You learn to honor process, to respect timing, and to wait for instruction, understanding that premature action can damage credibility and misaligned effort wastes strength. Becoming a vessel meant learning to carry weight without complaint, to absorb pressure without transferring it, to remain steady when expectations increased, because stability inspires trust and trust grants access. You learn to steward influence carefully, knowing that every word carries weight and every action communicates values. Becoming required integrity in private as well as public, consistency across environments, and faithfulness when no one was on it. Oaring because vessels leak when integrity is selective. You learn to prioritize substance over image, truth over trend, and depth over display, shaping an identity anchored in purpose rather than performance. This is for you who chose growth over comfort, correction over applause, and refinement over recognition, because such choices quietly shape authority and prepare you for greater responsibility. Becoming a vessel also required learning to forgive, to release offense, to heal unresolved wounds, because bitterness contaminates flow and unresolved pain distorts perception. You learn to process disappointment without becoming cynical, to acknowledge loss without losing hope, to face reality without surrendering faith, because emotional health preserves clarity and compassion, sustains influence. You learn that being a vessel means being responsive, not rigid, sensitive to timing, to instruction, and to context, because adaptability preserves relevance without compromising truth. Becoming required surrender of control, trusting that direction would come, that provision would follow, and that timing would align, even when clarity was partial. You learned that strength is not the absence of weakness, but the discipline to manage it, and that confidence is not noise, but quiet assurance rooted in preparation. This is for you who stayed committed to becoming, who resisted shortcuts, who honored process, because vessels built quickly often collapse under sustained demand. You learn to pace yourself, to grow steadily, to build systems that support longevity, understanding that purpose is a marathon, not a sprint. Becoming a vessel reshaped your values, refined your priorities, and clarified your focus, ensuring that when opportunity came, you would not be distracted, divided, or diluted. You realize that capacity determines how much can be entrusted, and capacity is expanded through obedience, patience, and faithful stewardship of what is already in your hands. As you continued to yield, to adjust, to refine, you became more aware, more grounded, more precise, because maturity brings clarity and clarity preserves impact. This is for you who allowed yourself to be shaped without resistance, who embraced process without complaint, who trusted timing without forcing outcomes, because what is being formed within you is designed to carry weight, to endure pressure, and to function with accuracy when demands increase. Becoming a vessel is ongoing, not completed, requiring continual sensitivity, continual humility, continual alignment as purpose unfolds in layers, assignments increase in complexity, and responsibility expands in proportion to capacity, ensuring that what is poured through you flows cleanly, consistently, and effectively, without distortion, without leakage, and without collapse as the journey continues forward in refinement, stewardship, and faithful becoming, without finality or conclusion.